Hey everybody, my name is Devon and I am an art therapist. I'm with Indigo Art Therapy Studio in Jacksonville, Florida. And I'm really excited for this art activity today. We're going to be talking about nature and we're going to be talking about weaving. That's what we're going to do today is we're going to do nature weaving. So I have a little example and then you and I are going to work on one together. So here is my first example on nature weaving. So if you notice, we're incorporating some sticks, we're incorporating some yarn, and we're incorporating some nature elements. We have moss, we've got flowers, we've got leaves, a little sprig of eucalyptus here. So let's get started. I can't wait to see what everyone comes up with. I'm really excited to bring art therapy, to bring art activities to you for your program. And I'm also really excited about the theme for this year for y'all, which is nature. I think nature and art go together so well, not only because there's clearly beauty in nature, but also that art gets a lot of its inspiration from that beauty. But it also gives us an opportunity to practice our five senses, which is a really great way to practice mindfulness. So as we work through this art activity, I'm going to be asking us to pay attention to various parts of our five senses. Our five senses are sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And these are sort of ways that we can be in the present moment. So as we work, I'm going to ask you to really be curious, almost kind of be an explorer, and investigate what you are seeing, what you are touching, what you are interacting with. I will say we're not going to be doing any tasting, so I should probably say four senses because I don't think we want to taste sticks or leaves or anything. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So you should already have this square that's been made with sticks. I have used hot glue and it should already be prepared for you, so you should be ready to move on to the next step. This is going to be kind of our framework for our weaving activity. So what I'm going to have you do is we're going to grab this and we're also going to grab some yarn. You might have a different color. I chose yellow just because it's a real cloudy day here in Florida today, so I thought I would bring in some sunshine. And so what we're going to do is we are going to go to a top corner. It can be the right or the left. I have chosen my right. We're just going to do a nice little tie. I want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, so I'm going to double knot it. I'm going to tie it twice. So here we have the beginning of our weaving. And what we're going to do is we are very kind of mindfully, carefully, going to be weaving this up and down. So if you notice, I'm weaving it in and out so that it connects to the top and then it connects to the bottom. And I'm going to try to do it about 10 times. And to make sure that it really doesn't move around too much, what I'm doing is I am coming up and around and looping it through. So this is going to make sure that you have space between each of these strings to weave and that it doesn't slide around. And as we're doing this, I'm going to ask you to use your sense of touch. So you might have someone be helping you here, or you might be doing this on your own, but we're working with two completely different textures here. So we have the yarn, which is a little soft, it's a little stretchy. And you have the sticks. The sticks are hard, they might be a little bit scratchy. If you actually got like sticks from nature, your sticks might be a little flaky, they might have dirt on them. All right, so I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna do a few more. 7, 8. All right, and I'm running out of room, so I'm going to stick with 8, but you can do 10 if you find that you need to. All right, so I'm going to even this out. And then what we're going to do is we are going to take our weaving square and we're going to rotate it. So now the lines are horizontal, which means they're going back and forth instead of up and down. Up and down is vertical. And then we're going to move these vertically. So we're going to do the same thing we did here. Up and down. And if you notice, I'm not kind of weaving, I'm not looping it around like I did the first way because I can't, because they're in the way. So we're sort of creating a grid here. And I don't really need as many lines here. So I'm going to stick with 5. And remember that there really isn't any wrong way to make art. So as long as you have yarn going in one direction and you have yarn going in another direction, you should have a really successful weaving finished product. So don't feel too stuck on the numbers. So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to cut my yarn with a little bit of extra space here so that I can be sure to tie it. We don't want it to slip around. And if you notice, I'm going to tie it right here on the end. I'm going to loop it around. If you have extra string hanging off the side like I do, you can leave it there or you can trim it. I'm going to leave it because I think it kind of makes it look a little fun and rustic. Okay. So we have created the framework for our weaving. So let's take a moment and use our sense of sight. So let's just focus on the negative space. So negative space is the absence of things, sort of. So negative space is where there isn't anything going on. So if you notice, all the space in between the yarn creates different shapes. So let's see if we can find 3 different shapes within this negative space. So I see a square right here. I see a triangle right here. And I see a bunch of other kind of floppy looking triangles or wacky looking rectangles. So I'm really interested in what kind of shapes you see. So take a moment and use your sense of sight and maybe tell a friend or someone that you are working with the shapes that you find. After you've done that, we are going to step into our weaving portion, and this is where we really get to play around with some nature elements. So I have cheated a little bit, and I have ordered some nature elements online, and I'm really excited to use what I have. So I have got this nice bag of moss. I think it's fake. And if you notice, it has a whole bunch of different textures, got a bunch of different colors. So I'm going to use a little bit of this. I'm going to put this over here. And I have 1 sprig of eucalyptus, which smells really nice. And then I have a few, these are very delicate, so I'm going to take my time lifting these up, a few pressed leaves. And I'm going to save these for the end because they are pretty delicate. So I'm going to put these over here, and we're going to start with our moss. And the first thing I want you to do, you might have different colors of moss in front of you as well. I want you to choose the color that you're drawn to, like right away. So for me, I'm really interested in this purple, but I'm going to start with this really nice textured green moss. Awesome. So I've pulled off a big chunk of moss. Let's just take a second and smell it. So this might be fake moss, but it actually smells pretty good. So we're going to use our sense of smell, and we're just going to see what that reminds us of. Does it remind you of anything? Is it a pleasant smell? Do we not like it? And then what we're going to do is we are sort of, without any real plan, we're going to start tucking pieces of our moss. I'm going to move all my stuff out of the way so you can see. We're going to start tucking pieces of our moss into our little weave that we've made. This is sort of a loom. So there isn't any rhyme or reason. You don't have to, oftentimes I think with weaving we assume we have to create a pattern, we have to go in and out, we have to really be structured with this. We can just tuck however much of the moss that we want, wherever we want. That is the really fun thing about art, is that it's up to you. There really isn't any wrong answer. And there also, another thing that I really like about weaving activities are that if you don't like where something goes, you can always change it. you are not committed to leaving these materials where you have tucked them, which can sometimes be something that's frustrating about things like paint or drawing. All right, so I've got what I feel like is a nice textured background with my moss. So I'm gonna grab my eucalyptus, which is right here. I'm gonna add it. It's pretty big, so I want it to really kind of take up space across my loom. And this is somewhere that I am going to be a little bit more careful about where I tuck it because it's not as easy to spread as the moss. So I'm really gonna kind of weave it in and out here. And this is where we're going to tap into our sense of sound. So as you start moving the moss, as you start adding a few more things into this weaving, you might notice some crunching. This isn't quite going. I'm gonna change this up a little bit. You might notice some crunching, you might notice some smooshing. So just pay attention to the fun noises that this is making. There we go, this is what I want. Okay. All right, so I've got my eucalyptus coming through here. Got my moss as a nice background. Now let's talk for a second about the other moss that I have in here because I just noticed this beautiful purple. It's a very different texture from the first moss that I chose. The first moss that I chose is kind of crinkly. It's a little bit crunchy. This is really delicate and soft. I'm so excited to put it in here. So I'm going to keep the camera on so you can see where I've decided to put it. I'm tearing it up into little pieces. You may decide that you don't like the purple moss. You may decide you want to put it somewhere else. And I think the good thing to keep in mind when you're doing really any art activity is that you are creating something that no one's created anything exactly like what you are going to create. What I'm going to end up with my finished product is going to be totally different than what you're going to create. And that is honestly, that's the coolest thing about art is that you are going to end up with something that has not existed that is exactly like that. And that means it's unique, just like we are. Okay, so the last thing I want to incorporate before I move on to my final one is this other moss. So let's take a second to listen. I'm hoping maybe you can hear it. All right. So we are using our sense of hearing right now, and we are just sort of paying attention to that. This sounds a lot different than the other materials that we chose. And so I'm going to tear this up. And I'm going to tuck a few pieces in. Snuggle them in. Very nice. All right, what do we think? I think I'm going to grab a little bit of this bright green moss that I see. And I'm going to tuck it here. I am loving the colors that are popping up through here. All right. My goodness, I've made a mess with all this moss. Let me see if I can move it out of the way. All right, so the very last thing that we're going to use are these beautiful pressed leaves. You might have also received some pressed flowers as well, so you can feel free to incorporate those. Let me show you a little bit about the pressed flowers because I think I forgot about them. Which I can't believe I forgot about them because they're gorgeous. So here are some of the pressed flowers. And the leaves came in that same package as well. So you might need to take a second to cut them out. And like I said, these are very delicate. So we really want to be gentle when we are opening them up. There we go. All right. So I'm going to choose a few beautiful pressed leaves and flowers to add to the top of my woven piece. And if you find that when you want them on top, they're not really staying, you can use some glue that will help secure it. Because these delicate flowers, they might not really love being snuggled deep into the loom like we have done with the other pieces of moss. So if you notice, I've put a few pressed leaves here. I've added a pressed daisy. I'll show you my finishing touches. We have some nice, we've got a 4-leaf clover. Look at that. Good luck. I'll put that in there too. Ooh. All right, so when we're putting our finishing touches on this, I'm really going to have you use your 5 senses. So as you're finishing up, take a moment to appreciate not only how this looks, I mean, really, really look at it. What are the colors that you see? What are the textures that you see? What do these colors or textures remind you of? Do you see something that looks like a plant that you have, maybe in your backyard or on your porch? Also pay attention to what you're hearing. As you finish weaving things in, you might notice that as you're weaving, as you're moving these pieces of nature around, there's some sounds that come up, some crunching, some smooshing, like we talked about earlier. And as with anything with mindfulness, when we practice mindfulness, when we pay attention to the things around us, we aren't placing judgment on them. So we're not saying, this is a good noise, this is a bad noise. We're just noticing. And I think that, especially in nature, the opportunity to notice can really give us an opportunity to see a lot of beauty around us. So with that in mind, let's take a second. Feel free to pause if you need to, if you need more time, but let's take a second to appreciate the beauty of this piece. I love this so much. I love this so much. It's like a garden that I can hang on my wall. So feel free to explore a little bit more, use your senses, take a look around and look at your friends, see what choices they made, and remember that every piece of artwork is different, just like every person is different, and there is beauty in every person, just like there is beauty in every piece of artwork. That is it for this nature-themed weaving activity. I'm really happy that I got to share this with you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.